What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a discussion, really, about hype in the video games industry as a whole. As the title probably told you, me personally, I don't really get hyped up about video games anymore, which might sound a little odd because what I like to do is review games after I 100% them, which in general is something people kind of get burned out on usually. So when people see me do that and then at the same time say I don't even get hyped up for video games, that can confuse people a little bit. So I'll obviously explain myself a little. Now, truth be told, I used to absolutely get hyped up about video games, but I would say the game in particular that kind of killed it for me was actually Diablo 3. Now, when I was very young, like 8th grade, I would play Diablo 2 religiously, like all the time. It's pretty much all I did outside of school. So naturally, I was very excited for Diablo 3. Now, at the time, I obviously wasn't nearly as involved in the video games industry as a whole, like, reviewing games and everything all the time. So I guess I just wasn't prepared for when Diablo 3 came out and was just kind of an okay game. Now, personally, I don't have a problem with Diablo 3. I think it's fine. It's just not nearly as good as Diablo 2 was, or at least my memory of what Diablo 2 was. Now, truth be told, I think just about anyone and everyone has a similar story to that. Just recently, we've had Cyberpunk come out and basically flop. Honestly, I thought it was a pretty decent game overall, discounting the bugs. But it definitely wasn't what it was marketed to be, which I'll get into here momentarily. And then we had a game like Biomutant, which honestly came out. There wasn't a lot of bugs. It was a really good game, but at the same time, it wasn't what people were expecting it to be, I suppose. So while I think that game overall did pretty well, it definitely disappointed some people. Now that time has passed and, I am actually pretty actively involved in video games, that is to say doing reviews and things all the time. Something people often mention actually is that I seem pretty mellow. I don't get over the top. I don't get super excited about games or just over the top energy levels like a lot of YouTubers do. And there's a few reasons for that, honestly. Perhaps most notably, though, is that I've worked in sales in some form or another for the last decade. I know that marketing is just an attempt to sell you something, and as such, is not always representative of the product you are actually going to receive. And while most entities will avoid actively lying about products because, laws exist, they will, however, stretch the truth and present that information in a way that makes it seem like something it isn't. For examples of this, I point you to the recent E3 showcase. There's a lot of games that were in that showcase that I'm excited for, but you look at games like Starfield, what they showed in their debut was basically nothing. They showed you a lot of cool imagery, they showed you a vibe, basically. And then afterwards, in an interview, they actually gave a couple of details, but again, it was basically nothing. Now, that right there tells me they're either not ready to talk about it, or it's still in flux, which, it might be both of those things, to be honest. But my point is if they're at a point where they're refusing to show you something, and instead they kind of try to jazz it up with trailers and things that don't actually show you what the game is or how it functions, then they are actively trying to misdirect your attention, in my opinion. Or at the very least, they want to avoid giving you a perception that it may perhaps change. I am all about how a game actually functions. I want to see actual gameplay, not a demo, not an on-the-rails presentation. I want to see someone actually playing the entire game in front of me. I want to see systems broken down. I want to see what they do, how they function. Is typically what I like to go over when I cover video games. That's typically how I approach my reviews and things, because anything else is at best marketing. And as I just mentioned, marketing tends to often be a misrepresentation in a lot of times. And for me personally, I've just seen that happen too many times to give video games that level of hype, if you want to call it that, just to be not exactly disappointed, but unsurprised that it wasn't exactly that when it came out. Now, that's not to say I don't love video games, because I do. I actively pre-order collector's editions, I'll back things on Kickstarter. I do all that stuff because I love video games and I want to see them made and I want to see them do well. However, hype in the video game industry is just the worst, in my opinion. The only thing hype does is drive sales and pre-orders and things for games that may deserve it, sure. A game might come out and be great, but I think it's important to understand that marketing is designed to hype people up to drive sales figures. Because it's important to understand, especially, that even if that game winds up not being that, they've already made their money. Probably no better example of that than Cyberpunk 2077. As much as people were upset with that game, understand that even with all those refunds, that game made its money back and then some. Like by a mile, actually. While it certainly hurt that studio's reputation, obviously, the game itself made its money, which is ultimately the goal of marketing. Which is all just a long-winded way of me saying this. If a game or trailer or anything like that is showing you anything but actual gameplay, actual systems, how they're actually working in the game, then you need to ask yourself, is this something that is at a point in development that it is subject to change? Or are they actively trying to show me something that is not the game, or at least not representative of what the game might, in its final stages, turn out to be? There you go, guys. Just kind of some of the reasons I think it's important to actually not get hyped up about video games and try to rely more on what is factual and that what you can see in front of you, and understand that marketing's entire point is to sell you something, not to make the product better or actually be good. So with that out of the way, hope you enjoyed the video, even if it is kind of a negative kind of subject in a lot of ways. But regardless, if you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching, listening to me ramble. Thank you. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.